Song always makes me dance a little bit. Hello, welcome to another Digital Photo Mentor YouTube live stream where I do photo editing live of subscriber and follower submitted images and edit them live. Today we are doing a dedicated Luminar day. So everything I do is going to be edited with Luminar Neo today. And that's why I have this slide up on my screen right now, because many of the images that I'm demonstrating today, or most of them actually, will be from my students in the Luminar Neo course that we just completed and is available. So if you are new to Luminar Neo, then I hope you enjoy the edits and you can see what's possible with Luminar Neo. And if you want to check out our course, that is the link. So I'm going to hop over to Luminar Neo and get started. Okay, I was trying not to sneeze so I had to get my intro video playing here. Let's see who is with us today. As usual, we probably have lots of regulars, lots of students from the class. Yes, Karen, I have your image as well. You probably see it there. You've got your image, Janet, as well. Welcome, Kelly. Always good to have you with us. Sheila. There might be some chocolate in our future, Sheila. Thanks for that. Happy Easter to you as well. Stephanie, we actually got snow up here yesterday, a little bit, just flakes. So you're lucky to have the rain. Vivian, a lot of images that you see on the screen are from the people I'm acknowledging and saying hello to now. So we'll be working with their images. Deb in Alaska. Robins, well, that's a plus based on compared to here. So awesome. Flying Camel, that's a great name, by the way. Sunny Warm UK. Excellent. And yes, Rob has just come back from visiting our farmer and picking up eggs for the week. So we go and buy our meats and our eggs directly from our local farmers, support local farmers. So Luminar Neo is the newest product from Skylum. It's been out for a few months. So if you're not currently using Luminar Neo, again, most of the people who I'm seeing in the chat here are already in my Luminar Neo course. And if you are using Luminar Neo, please let me know in the chat, or if you are not, if you've never seen it before. So this may be new for you, a few of these steps, but I want you to see what's possible. So I'm going to start with this image. Actually, let me start with somebody who's here. Let's see. Oh, that's Marty's. Okay, Vivian. How about we do Vivian's? Okay. All right, so this is Vivian's image, and I'm guessing this is Amsterdam, so it looks really familiar to me. So I've been there as well. And the challenge with this image, so I'm going to talk about why I'm doing what I'm doing as I'm doing it. Okay, let me just move myself over there. There we go. I'm going to talk about why I'm doing it, not just how. Okay, because you have to know what to do to the image before you get started. All right. So the first thing I want to do is to go into the develop panel, okay? And this is the only place where you can find your camera profiles if it recognizes your camera, which it does here for hers, okay? If I go back here, I can see that she had photographed it with an Olympus, okay? So it's recognizing her camera profiles here. And I'm going to try the different ones, okay? So vivid gives you more color, more contrast. Right? Natural usually tones the contrast down. Muted, I would expect even more. And then portrait usually gives more red and often tones down the contrast. So I don't know if any of those are any better than the Adobe one, right? So there's also Adobe Standard versus Luminar Default. So in this case, actually the Adobe Standard gives us a little more detail in the shadows and the highlights to start with, because that's what I'm going to be doing, is trying to bring out that in both areas. And my cloud is telling me I need to update. Okay, so when I look at this image, we see the high contrast. Go away, Adobe. We're not talking about Adobe today. So its feelings are left, its feelings are hurt. So when I look at this image, we have the highlights that are really bright, right? And the shadows that are really dark. So I want to try and even that out a little bit, but I don't want to make it so that it ends up looking my usual thing that I'm against, which is the neon puke, okay? So I don't want to do something like that, right? Because I've eliminated all the shadows basically, right? Although it's actually done a pretty good job, surprisingly. I'm going to bring the shadows up a little bit, but not that much. I am going to take the highlights down because look what that's doing. It's doing a really good job on the sky, the buildings, right? The sky more than anything, but the buildings are coming down a little bit as well. I could also work on the curves tool, right? I've done an entire video on just curves. Now see how that's really affecting the buildings nicely? And then I can just put another dot on here to bring the shadows back up to sort of the middle, right? So let's take a before, and I'm just using the backslash key. So before and where I'm at now. So we've already brought the contrast down a lot and brought that sky out that was almost missing, okay? Now her original exposure was actually really good because she's exposed for the bikes here, okay? And when we look at the histogram, okay, if you are on Mac, you will see a histogram on Luminar Neo currently. There isn't one on Windows, but if we look at mine here, you can see that there's a tiny little spike over on the right. So that means that there is something in the white areas that are clipping. Okay, I'm also going to just check off these boxes here because I want to see if there's any chromatic aberration. Now, where I'm looking for that is, let's just zoom in one more level. Do you see this little red outline here on the windows? And then on this other side, it's green. That's chromatic aberration. Okay, so that means that the lens is not focusing red, green, and blue at the same point. And the fix for that is, are you ready for it? One checkbox. Da, 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 da. Okay, just like that. So it's pretty easy to fix. And if we start pulling things where we're pulling highlights down, you often get what's called a fringe. So fringe will usually show up as purple. So I'm going to check that one off as well, because as we work this image, it may actually show up with a purple fringe on the edges of the bright areas. Okay. All right. So we can also do a transform here if I want to try and correct some of the building leaning, right? So when you're looking up at buildings, right, they tend to have a perspective distortion where the converging lines at the top. Now, she hasn't photographed upwards that much because I'm looking at this building and I'm looking at that building and it looks actually pretty straight, right? So there's not really much to do here. It looks pretty good already. I am going to use the crop tool and you can just hit C on your keyboard to see if it's straight. Okay, so notice when I hit horizon alignment, it tries to straighten things and it didn't do anything because it's pretty straight, right? So the only thing I am going to do here is I'm going to go free crop and get rid of some of this foreground. Okay, so when you have a lot of foreground in front of the subject, it makes it feel like it's farther away. And there's a good 20% of this image here that just isn't needed. Okay, we don't need all this ground stuff, and it gets rid of that one piece of trash on the ground. So I want to have a little bit of ground, but not that much. Okay. The other thing I could do is we could actually come in a little bit on this side and get rid of this white building, which would solve a lot of the brightness problems. So let's just see how that looks. Okay, so it's really come in closer on the bikes, which is the subject. We got rid of that bright building and the dark foreground. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is do enhance AI. Now they put these in order for a reason, okay? Because they suggest, or Skylum suggests, you start with develop raw, and you'll notice that I've applied the develop raw, and now it shows up over here under edits. Okay, so this is your history in Luminar Neo, and this one says develop raw because I'm working on her raw file. And now you'll notice that they're still developed back over here in the tools panel, but now it's not raw anymore. Okay, so the first time you apply it, it's applying raw, and you have some extra settings that you don't have later. Okay. So now I'm just going to try the accent AI and the sky enhancer And look what an amazing job that does. Because literally the beginning, we had almost no sky and we've pulled out tons of detail already. Okay, now if I increase this accent AI, look what it's doing. It's increasing the contrast and brightness down here. And I'm just going to scale the sky back a little bit. We're going to go back into another panel to correct some of the blue because it's getting to the point where it's almost too much blue. Okay. I see something in the sky over here, and I just wanted to go and look to see if it was a dust spot, but it's actually a plane. So I was going to erase it, but we'll leave it there. Okay. So as I mentioned, the next thing I'm going to do is try and fix some of these color issues. I didn't adjust the color in Develop Raw, but I could do that as well in terms of white balance. And the difference again is when you are in Develop and you go to the color panel, which is where white balance is, you have all of the presets that you have on your camera. Okay, so I could actually choose daylight or cloudy and make it warmer. Okay, I'm going to go with daylight. Can't remember what the number was when I was shot. Okay, so daylight, the number on here, okay, basically these are just presets that Luminar uses, similar to what you would have in your camera. Like I said, so daylight sets the temperature to a certain number and the tint to a certain number. Okay, so right now I'm looking at 52, 96, and 8. And daylight, it's given it a bit more yellow and less magenta, which I think is a good change. I'm going to just bring it up a little bit because it looks a little bit green. So I'm just doing it visually. And of course, my monitor is calibrated. So the colors that I'm looking at should be fairly accurate, okay, to what I'm looking at. So we did a little bit of white balance. Okay, now we come back over here. I'm going to go to the color tool and play with some of the sliders under HSL. You could try the remove color cast because it often does a great job overall. And it is removing a bit of the blue cast from the foreground here. Okay. So I'm going to bring this up a little ways, and then I'm going to go down into blue, and I'm going to take the saturation of blue down a little bit because I'm not liking where that sky is going. And it also tones down. You'll see there's a lot of blue in the foreground. Okay, so when I turn it all the way down, you'll see what's happening. Because there's blue in the shadows, but we have other ways of fixing that too. So I'm going to bring the saturation of the blues down a little bit. And I'm also going to play with the brightness, right? Now, notice that there's a lot of warmth up in here. So I could try orange, okay? So that's going to darken the buildings. And I literally just do this. This is my process. I want to see, okay, what is it affecting? So I'm going to bring those buildings down a little bit. Let's see red. Okay, so red is more the bicycle. So let's actually bring the red up a little bit. Yellow, as expected, again, is the building and also the leaves on the trees. Okay, so you want to be careful I don't darken the leaves too much, but I am going to bring it down a little bit. So let's see what this tool is doing. And I know Sheila likes the eyeball. Okay, so see how that tool is really toning the buildings down, but not in an unrealistic way. Okay. Now I'm going to jump down to my favorite, or becoming my favorite very quickly, is color harmony. Now this is a magical tool. Okay, so if I know Kelly said that you weren't using Luminar Neo. Okay, so this is a tool that you won't find anywhere else. You can do something similar in Photoshop, but you probably have to do a couple of adjustment layers. So what this one does is it adds contrast to one color while darkening the opposite color. Okay, so setting which color on the hue scale. Okay, so if I'm choosing right now, it's on red. Okay, see how it's brightening the bicycle, and the opposite color, which is like a cyan or a blue, so it's darkening the sky. Okay. So what I do with this one is I bring it up part way, and then I just go through the sliders, or the bottom slider rather. See if I'm here now, I'm on blue. It's giving me more contrast in blue and darkening the red. Okay, so I do like the idea of brightening the red. Right. See what that's doing, but it's also affecting the buildings, and I don't want to do that so much. Okay? So I might bring it up a little bit and then just mask this one in. Okay, so I'm going to paint it in to just the bicycle. See, now it's just affecting the bicycle. And I didn't do this one over here because the red was getting a little bit too much. Okay. Now I'm going to close it, and I'm going to open this tool again because I also want to play with the split color warmth. Okay, so warm slider increases the warmth of already warm colors or decreases them. Okay, so we can go either way. And then the cool colors either get warmed up or cooled off. Okay, now if I want to warm up the foreground, I can go this way. And let's just go a little bit this way. So I'm looking only at the bicycles and down, right? So it's doing a nice job there, and I'm going to paint it in again. Okay, so I'll often do one filter for a certain part of the image and then apply it again, right, on a different part. Let's take it a little farther so you can see what it's doing. It's really actually adding some color in the water as well. So maybe I don't want so much red in the water. So I'm just going to mask it off this area because it makes the water look sort of brown, right? Something like that. Okay. Can you see what it's doing? It's kind of subtle. It's off and on. Okay, so we've come really far with this one already, adjusting the contrast. Okay, we need to add a vignette. I want to do that. So bring the brightness down, feather. Okay, now notice because I cropped it, the vignette comes in off center because it's centering on the original image. Let's do something like that. And we're really going to focus on this red bicycle. Something like that. Okay. The last couple of things I'm going to do is toning. Okay. And again, I'm going to bring the shadows a little bit warmer. So I bring the amount up, saturation up, and I bring this up high because I need to pick the color. I'm looking at the road. I'm looking at this part here, the cobblestones, and I want to get it sort of more neutral because it's still pretty cool. Okay, so see how that's affecting that part there. Now, if I want to paint it out of anywhere, I can, okay, because it's making the buildings warmer as well. Still a little bit too red. So I may erase it partially from the buildings. Okay. Oh, see, this is what I did. I made a boo-boo again because I forgot to hit erase. Okay, so I painted in the wrong area, okay, and now I just have to invert it. Probably paint the sky out as well. I don't need... I'm still painting. Erase, erase. Abort, abort. I don't want red in the sky. So to get the mask to show, I'm using the / key on here. So let's see the full before and after of this tool. See how now this ground matches the colors much better in the buildings. Okay, so I'm just evening it up. Because when you have stuff in the shade, it's cool. It's going to be bluer than stuff in the sun. Okay. Let's look at the overall before and after. Okay. But see how it still has contrast and it still has punch. Okay, we don't want to eliminate all the contrast. Another one I might do on this one is a LUT. Okay, and I've got my previews of my LUTs here. So LUTs are a way to do color grading on your image. Okay, I've made some presets contact sheets. So if you don't have access to these, Rob, if you could please share the link to the contact sheets. If you're using Luminar Neo and you don't have the contact sheets, There isn't a way to preview these in Luminar Neo right now, these LUTs. So I just made a little contact sheet and made it available for you to download. So what I'm looking for is something that sort of, says old European, right? This 1991 might be kind of interesting. And the numbers that I've put on here is the percentage at which I applied it to get this look. Okay. The other way I could go is something more in the cross-processing area, something down in this area, maybe Gloria or Seattle. So let's try Gloria. And they're in the order on the sheet that match this list. Okay, so they start from top to bottom. Let's try this one. Ooh, so that gives me a very sort of like 70s, right? European faded out postcard look. Right? And keep in mind that I've applied this fairly high, so I can always dial it back. Do you remember the other one that I said? I often like wooden if I want to go for more of an antique look. This one's kind of cool, as well as sepia. Okay, so it's a really easy and quick way to add these color grading looks. Okay, 1990 was the other one I said that was interesting. That's kind of cool. Red trace is going to give me the bicycle, right? And not much else. So look at that. Sorry, I got to sneeze. Oh, there we go. Sorry, sorry about that. Oh, hey, Phil Steele is watching my live. Well, hey, Phil. So let's try, which is the one that I just had that I liked. Well, that's kind of cool as well. Okay, so cross-processing. The other ones I could look at are the ones that were on sale recently to support Skylum and Ukraine, and these ones are the Land of Freedom lots. And there was a couple in here that I really liked as well that I could see myself using quite a lot. I like Odessa in the Zapor. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it. Right. So when you're adding a custom lot, you just have to go up to the top of the menu, load custom LUT file, and then find them. I have them in my packs here. So I've got quite a few LUTs. And I'm going to add this one with the Z or Z. Okay. I always dial them up strong so I can see what they're doing, and then I can adjust the other parameters. Okay. So this helps me decide which one I like. So there's lots of good options here. I think this is a really cool scene. I have quite a few like this myself from Amsterdam. I did some night ones as well, but I think the one I liked the best was this first one that I put on here. This one that makes it look sort of 70s. Okay. I'm going to keep it up a little bit of contrast. So everything I did to warm up the shadows, we're now going the other way. Okay. So this is Vivian's image. Do you have a preference, Vivian, as to which color you like on this one? Because it's your image, right? Nigel from Bahamas, welcome. Good to see you, Nigel. So let's go. Since I did all that work to warm things up, I'm not going to undo all my work. So let's go with wooden. So now really the effect is the bicycle, that red bicycle really stands out. Right. So those of you that have taken my Luminar Neo course, I talk about this a lot when on my website as well, in terms of look at the image upside down. So I'm actually going to rotate this completely upside down, because when you do that, what happens is your eye will go to the things that your eye will be drawn to right side up, okay? Especially as a viewer who wasn't there or didn't take the photo, because you took the photo, you know what the subject is, right? So for me, my eye is still going to this building down here and this little white cloud, right? So what can I do to solve that? Okay, well, first I'm going to put it back right side up. So I just use the upside down trick to help me to narrow in, zero in on what it is that I want to edit. Now, I've been doing this for 30 some years, and I've been using Photoshop since 1994 or something crazy. So I don't actually have to turn it upside down anymore. My brain sort of does that for me, all right? Yeah, it's Amsterdam for sure. Okay. Now, yeah, the dance Sheila. Yeah, I'm gonna get a t-shirt. I'm swearing. All right, so now that I figured out, okay, this cloud is a little bright still, and this building and these little whites. So there isn't a dodge and burn tool currently in Luminar Neo, right? Again, if you took my course, you'll know this trick. So I use the develop tool as my dodge and burn tool. So I'm going to adjust these things. Okay, now see how that's affecting all the areas that I want to tone down really nicely. And of course, I can just mask them in. So when I paint and use it as a dodge and burn tool, I always bring my opacity down below about 30 and then paint it in because I want to sort of build it up gradually. I don't want to just go, boom and have a big blob. Okay. So I'm just going over these little bits here, that anything that's white, and I would zoom in a little bit more to be more precise with my painting. I often also use a Wacom graphics tablet for my editing, which allows me to use a brush as opposed to a mouse for these things. Okay, so it's just a little more precise and less hand cramping and things. So now for the sky, I'm actually going to turn the strength way down, and I'm just going to do a quick pass over the cloud because I really don't want it to affect any other bits. I just want to get this cloud a little bit, right? And see how that's going. So let's turn it on and off. Let me back out here. Can you see what it's doing? It is affecting the areas that I wanted. And if I want to go farther, I could paint more, or I can just dial this up and down. So see what it's affecting? It's affecting the areas where I painted, like so. I could also actually lower the contrast a little bit because that will help bring those areas less attention. Because your eye goes to four things. It goes to areas of contrast, brightness, as we noticed upside down, bright color, which is why the red bike stands out, and sharpness. Most of the things in this image are fairly sharp, so we can actually do something about that as well if you want to bring more attention to the bicycle. So that's my little dodge and burn trick. And then if there's areas you want to lighten, you just have to close develop and apply it again. Okay. Now you'll see that when I go into the edits or the history, I've got develop at the bottom and develop again at the top. Okay. One of the things that has been requested of Skylum, and because I'm a Skylum ambassador, I get to have conversations with direct conversations. We have meetings all the time with the team leaders and even the CEOs of the company. And we get to tell them, what our readers and our followers are asking for. And one of the things that that I would like is to be able to rename my edits. So I could still have it called develop, but I might want to call it dodge and burn or something like that. Okay. So I'm going to dial the structure down. See, that brings the sort of focus, like it makes the image blurry. It's like negative clarity. And then I'm going to make sure I've got the right brush this time. I'm going to paint it in to the buildings, okay, just to bring a little bit less focus to them. Right? They're definitely part of the subject because it does give you a clue as to where this image was taken, but I want to make sure that the focus is still on the bicycles. And again, if I want, I can even create blur in the foreground and give it more of a shallow depth of field look. Right? I can also come in and do the structure a second time and add structure, and this time paint it in to the bicycles. Okay? And maybe a little bit on these cobblestones in the foreground here. So I'm really drawing your eye with all of those elements that I talked about. Okay, sharpness, contrast. Just have this blend a little better here. Okay. Let's do a full before and after. Okay. And I think we're done with this one. You could also try relight on this one because it does a good job on isolating the subject in the foreground. See, I could brighten up the foreground that way. But I've done the same thing other ways. Okay? I find though with the relight tool, it lights the very foreground too much. So if you're using this tool, I usually go in and mask again, erase the foreground. Okay, so it doesn't affect this front part because I find that it lights up the very things closest to the camera the most, and I don't want them lit up that much. So it actually is not doing too bad here. Okay. Notice there's also a way to warm up the foreground even more. So those bicycles, and cool down the buildings. Okay, so you can really take it to extremes. So there's lots of different ways in Neo to come to the same result, and none is right or wrong. It's just a matter of which tools you're comfortable with, as long as you get to the end result of something you're happy with. Okay? Let's try another image. Let's see. Anne is not here today. Okay, Jen is here. I don't know if Sue's here. I'm going to do hers as well. So Jan sent this image in, and I know that you had taken this with a camera that had a problem with the sensor, and you got a great shot of this owl, but then, of course, this technical problem. Okay, so she's cropped it, obviously, and then done some removal of some of the branches, because I know your question was about erasing, okay? So let's give this one a go. This is the edit that she's done. Okay, my only suggestion for you on this one is it looks pretty good, but there's a lot of noise. You see how there's a lot of specular bits here and lots of color. Okay, so that's noise, and it's gone a little too far with the saturation. So we're basically going to do the same kind of thing. Okay, and it looks like she's done a little bit of erasing on this one already. So I'm going to go back to the original and just see what I can do here. Okay, so we're going to start with this one. Obviously, we're going to crop it first. Okay, and we need to crop either freeform, or I'm going to come up to the bottom here. And I want to give him more space to fly into, so I'm going to take away some of this tree. And I'm just going to get rid of this little white area on the right here. And so it ends with something dark on the edge. So I'm always conscious of light bits on the edges for the same reasons that I mentioned earlier. Okay. Now I'm going to go to develop. And when I look at the histogram here, again, I have the advantage because of seeing the histogram because I'm on Mac. I'm also told that the histogram is coming very soon. So possibly with the next minor update, we should have a histogram that floats, that we see all the time, right? So what I'm looking at in the histogram here is there's a big gap over on the right, meaning there's nothing white. So by pulling this one in, I can adjust the histogram so that I get some pure whites, right? So it's going to adjust the contrast of the image, right, and brighten it up. I can keep using the curves tool because I want to brighten this owl. That looks pretty good. And make it into an S curve. Okay, so the S curve adds contrast. So whenever you have a curve that looks like that, okay, you're adding contrast. When you make one the other way, or an inverse S curve, you're decreasing contrast. So I want to give him some nice whites, but keep the darks a bit shadowier. Is that a thing? Okay, we'll do your image next, Anne. I see that you are here, right? Vivian said she loves her edit. And did you confirm that that was indeed Amsterdam? Thanks, Sheila. I know you like that one as well. Awesome. All right, so we'll do yours next, Anne, because you've got a really cool image. Okay, so now we've got a little bit more contrast. We can also try the smart contrast. Right? I find, though, if I'm doing curves, it gives me a little bit more control over where I'm adjusting the contrast. So I like what's happening there. I'm just going to increase the exposure a tiny bit. So remember, exposure affects the midtones of your image more than the rest, okay? Because it's pulling the grays up. Okay, so notice that I haven't really increased the exposure much on this image, but look how much brighter it is. Okay, I've only taken it up 1/3 of a stop, but I've done all of that with the curve. Okay. let's just double check. Okay, so now remember I said that there is only the optics appear when you're in RAW. Because this is not a RAW file, I don't have the chromatic aberration box, but I am going to check off auto defringe, right? I'm going to zoom in a little bit because where you're going to get that fringe is around dark areas and light areas where they meet, where you're pulling down the highlights, for example. So see if I pull down these highlights, let me just see if there's a fringe there. Okay. If there is a color fringe that shows up, it's going to remove it, okay, or try. Now I also know that there's a lot of noise here, so I'm going to do some noise reduction here, and then I'm going to use the other tools for noise reduction. So I'm going to bring this down up a little bit, and let's look at our owl. I'm going to do a little bit of sharpness here, but again, I'm not masking any of this in. This is global, so global applies to the whole image. I'm going to go and use details to sharpen the owl a little bit more. Okay. How's our color? Okay. Is he neutral? Do we need to neutralize him? We could try the eyedropper on his face if he's pure white. Okay. So see how that did adjust a little bit, minus yellow a little bit. But I think he's a little more beige, so I'm just going to keep him at -2. Okay. So there's our basic develop. Okay. Now we need to deal with some of the branches. The other option is we could actually just blur them out. Okay. So we can try relight on him and see if that works to brighten the owl. So see how it's brightening the tree because it recognizes that the tree is sharp and the owl is considered part of the background. Looks like we can get him, but it's going to make sort of a halo around him. So I think this tool needs a bit more refining it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So it's a bit hit and miss for me. Okay, so I'm not going to use that one. Okay, let's go structure and details because I want to add some nice detail on him. So we're going to go structure plus. Okay, so that's doing a nice job. And I don't want it on the background, so I'm just going to paint it in to the owl. Okay. So when I'm doing this on my own images, I spend a lot more time painting a little more accurately. Okay, so I'm trying to do a quick demonstration for you, but this is not bad. Okay, I might want to give it up to the tree as well, but the tree actually already has a lot of sharpness, so I'm just going to leave it on the owl. And another thing that I can't wait for is copy and paste the mask because I want to be able to use what I just painted on another tool. And that's currently not available in Neo. Okay. Details. Okay, so this is the one that's really going to make him pop. Again, take these sliders up high to see what they do. And he's actually not as sharp as he could be. It's a great shot of action, but it's really hard to get birds in flight. Right? So he's not as sharp as this tree is over here. Okay, see how the focus is sort of up here, right? So we need to sharpen him a little bit. And if you have Topaz Sharpen AI, you can use that. But there's a nice little trick with the details panel. Look at how much sharper he looks by bringing up small details. I'll just turn this one off. Look at his face and his feathers, okay? Especially the pattern in here, okay? So blurry, sharp. Now it is adding some noise as well, but we can deal with that. So I'm going to do the same thing. And this is why I really want to have the copy and paste the mask. Okay, so I'm going to paint it in again, pretty high actually, because I want it just on him. Now the tips of his wings here are blurry because they're moving slightly. So I'm actually not going to paint them in, or I'm going to paint them in at a lower opacity with this tool. Okay, so I'm only going to do it at 30% because if he's moving and his wing is out of focus because it's moving, I don't want to sharpen that part. I just want his face sharper. So let's see the difference. See that? Okay, now let's deal with the noise. So luminosity, And I mentioned the color speckles that I saw in the tree earlier. I'm going to bring color noise up just a little bit. Now, be careful if you take your noise to denoise too far, because see how it does is it literally blurs everything out. Okay, so it's the opposite of the sharpening that we just did. So you have to be really careful. So I want to denoise, but I don't want to de-sharpen. Okay, so again, like Sheila said, to quote me, it's a dance. Right, so I might need to increase the luminosity and say, okay, I'm happy with the denoise here, and then go back in my edits and actually increase the details a little bit more and the sharpness. Okay, so it's that dance between. And when you go back a step in Neo, so right now the denoise filter is not showing. As soon as I apply this one and go back up to denoise, now it's showing the full edits. Okay, so if we look at the image before and after, as soon as it catches up, you see how he's brightened and sharpened. Okay. Okay, so now those branches. Honestly, I'm not sure that I would spend the time erasing them, but we can certainly try and get rid of some of the ones that are objectionable. Okay, so which ones are objectionable? For me, it's the ones that are sticking out of the edge of the image or just poking in. So I'll get rid of those. And as always, I recommend doing a couple of erases at a time. Definitely you want to zoom in on this because you don't want to get something mucked up near his head. I always stop before I get to the edge of something. Okay, so I do most of it, and then I'm just going to do one click there and see what it does. Okay, so see how it just made like a little bump on his head? Okay, so I'm just going to try and smooth his head out a little bit. Yeah, see now I'm just making a mess. So if it gets worse, there we go. So I just keep trying to smooth it out. If it gets worse, I can just restore it. So I can draw the line here on his head and click restore, and then just try this part again. Okay. So I just kind of, I had a good one and I restored it. All right. So I just kind of keep going until I get a nice one. Let's do a tiny brush. There we go. That looks pretty good. Okay. Same thing here, right? I'm just going to get rid of most of this one. Get close to his wing. And then just one click here. See, messed it up again. So when you get near edges of things, it gets tricky. So I find that sometimes just doing a couple of passes like that works well. Okay. So those were the ones for me that were quite objectionable. There's also one down here, which is sort of coming out from his wing, and it looks really obvious. So I want to get rid of that one because it looks sharp too. So short passes. Right, so this is not a marathon, or it's not a sprint, right? It's a marathon. You got to do little bits at a time here. See how that worked? So if I look at the erase, it's going to take a lot of work to erase all of this, but it's not impossible. You just have to sort of keep going and clean up the parts that are, like I said, really objectionable, right? So maybe this one sticking out here. I just have to blend that. And use a smaller brush when you get into these little bits here. Okay, so I'm not going to keep going and do this whole owl because it's going to take a lot of work, right? But you can see where it's going. I wouldn't remove all of the branches, but like I said, just the ones that are bothering me, possibly this one out of his head as well, and the ones that are closest to him. But I would leave the rest because he's kind of in the trees, right? Yeah, see, Al says he likes the branches, right? It looks real. He's flying through the trees for sure. So as usual, I would give this one a vignette. So my trick, right? Turn the amount down, turn the feather down, get the size and the shape and the position. and then feather it back up and soften it. Okay. This one actually might benefit from a light vignette. What happens if we make it more airy? Okay. Let's eliminate that tree being so bright or so dark and punchy. Okay. So that's actually not bad as well, right? Let's give it a bit of blur. We could go a different direction with this one. And then let's say what happens if we do a glow. Okay, so glow has different tools. They each do slightly different things on the image. So glow, this one's going to make the background glow. And look what happens to those branches, right? They almost disappear. Okay. Look at that. So see what that's doing to the branches? And of course, all we have to do if we want less of that on him is to erase. I'll make sure I have the eraser and just make sure that he's not affected. Okay. So the opposite is now true of what I said before, right? So things which are grabbing your attention are still the same. Areas of sharpness. So now he's the sharpest thing in the picture. Okay. We could blur that tree on the left even more. Areas of bright color. He is the most color. He is the only color. Okay. Areas of contrast. So areas of contrast, you could have the brightest thing stand out or the darkest thing because he's now on the white background, he stands out. Okay. So I might even crop this tree out or do something with this tree even more. Okay. Because look at what this is doing, and it's really helping even blend in the erasing that we did earlier. So any sort of boo-boos we did in the erasing are now softened, and it's sort of more forgiving. Okay. I actually like this. It makes it feel like a little bit ethereal, right? Him flying. So I hope that's helpful for you, Jen. And that's the direction that I would go. Oh, she lost her video connection. So hello, Trish from Down Under. Welcome. Okay, let's take a look at another one. But this is a great image, Jen. You know, you did a great job capturing this owl in flight. Okay, this is the one of Anne's that I wanted to do, but she's got two really cool images. She's got this one. Is this somewhere in Vancouver? It's one of the new sculpture things, Anne. So this is Anne's, and this is Anne's. And I wanted to work on this one because I thought this was a really cool scene. Okay. All right, so same steps. You've got a raw file. We're going to start with develop raw. And the profile, there's a landscape profile for her camera. So I'm going to jump right there and look what happens. Okay, so always start with your profiles if it recognizes your camera, because you can usually find one that gets you a lot closer before you do any other editing. Okay, so see what that did. So landscape usually increases the blues and the greens. So in this case, really brought out this sky. Okay. So what do I want to do with this image? Okay, so that's the next thing we want to consider, right? There's a white roof over here that's going to be grabbing attention and the reflection of the white roof. So maybe we'll crop that out or we'll tone it down. Okay, there's also this ramp over here that's actually, so your eye comes in with these leading lines, right, to the house. And then this ramp, because it's so bright, is actually taking you out of the picture. Okay, so we want to, is it going this way? This way. Okay. We want to keep your eye in the picture. Okay. So I may end up cropping that out. There's also a little red thing over on the side here, and that's going to get cropped out as well. So just off the top of my head, those are the things that I want to do, and I want to make sure it's straight. Okay. But let's do whatever we're going to do in here before we move on. So my histogram exposure looks pretty good. There probably is something clipping, and I'm going to guess it's that white roof. So I'm going to bring the highlights down. Can you see what's happening there? Watch the roof as I do that. Do you see that weird pattern that's showing up on the roof? Here, let me just zoom in and see if it shows up. See how there's stripes on the roof? Okay, as I adjust it, see how it looks like there's this weird pattern showing up there? And that's what's called a moire pattern, okay? And there isn't a correction for that in Luminar, but you'll notice that after I let go of the tool, it sort of corrected itself, right? I'm going to check these guys off. So if you are photographing something with patterns like that, right? See now, look, it showed up again, and then as soon as it finished applying, you'll get that with maybe a suit, like if somebody has like a houndstooth suit or a silk blouse or something, okay? So you'll get a moire pattern in subjects like that, okay? I'm going to back out here and see if I need to do any corrections. Do we want to do distortion corrections? Okay, so see how it sort of changes the perspective a little bit. For me, that's neither here nor there. Let's check vertical. Okay, so the trick with the verticals is there's no grid when using this tool. So what I do is I hit C on my keyboard, okay, to get the crop tool. And when I click outside of the area that I'm adjusting, you get this grid. Okay, so I'm clicking and holding. And now I'm looking at the vertical lines of this house or lodge or whatever it is. And to me, it looks already pretty straight. So I don't think I need to do any vertical adjustment, right? But while I'm in here, I'm going to do some cropping. So I'm going to click this crop AI button because Luminar Neo will do a suggested crop for you, right? Now, I find that it often crops the correct amount, but not necessarily in the right position. But look what it's done, okay? It's cropped most of that roof out. I'm just going to adjust so we get rid of the red thing and get rid of most of the roof and that ramp. Now the sky up here is basically all blue and there's not really anything there of interest. So we're going to come in about there. Okay. There's a tiny little bit of this roof left, so I could either come back to give it just a little bit more. Then I'll have to deal with this bit in the corner here. Okay, let's see how that looks. And I did go off aspect ratio there. Okay. So I'll deal with these white bits in a different way. Okay. So before and after, okay, so we've picked up the blues. Let's try our enhance AI. And notice that this slider here only shows up when it recognizes the sky. And you want to be careful of doing stuff like this, okay? Because you end up with this sky that doesn't look real. And you see how there's this little outline there, okay? That's not snow, that's a halo. So you don't want to have that. Okay? So keep it minimal. But what is it doing on the rest of the image, okay? Is it doing a nice job down here? Absolutely. Okay, so what I'm going to do is bring this up fairly high and then just paint it in, again, at a fairly high opacity with a fairly large brush to the dark areas of the building and this dock here, because I really want attention in here and this reflection. Okay? So I make sure not to get the white part. See how it's just picking up that part there? And a smaller brush, get in the smaller areas, like so. Okay. Let's do a vignette. So I want to do a vignette because I want to darken the edges for sure. And come in a little bit. Again, you see how I cropped, and that vignette is cropped automatically to the original image. So we need to resize it. Something like that. You can also light the inside of the image too, but I find when I do that, it ends up, again, it doesn't give me the same control as if I do a dodge and burn. Okay. So subtle, but I want to just keep the eye into the center. Okay. Let's try the landscape tool because we've got some nice golden hour stuff here. We could give it a little bit more of a golden glow. So the colors are nice there. We could also go try that color tool and remove color cast. Okay. There's not a lot of foliage here, but you'll notice that the building is actually green. So we could punch up the color of this building using the foliage enhancer. Foliage. Okay. The other one here is dehaze. Okay, now notice that the mountains in the background look sort of hazy. See what happens if I drag this dehaze slider. Look what it's doing to the background. Right now I'm going to bring golden hour down a little bit, but it's doing a really good job of sort of picking up some contrast in the mountains in the background. Okay. I like that. And let's go try the color harmony tool. Again, I like to try this one on almost everything. My challenge with this one is that blue and green are next to each other on the color wheel. You know, I got to go find myself a color wheel. So if you're looking at a color wheel, images that are across from each other, let me find a good one here. I've got a color wheel to show you here. How about this one? Okay. So images that are across from each other are what's called complementary or opposite, right, on the color wheel. So blue and green are next to each other. So what this color contrast tool is doing is it's actually looking for colors across from each other. So the ones that are next to each other, which are called analogous colors, they're actually going to be affected the same. Okay, so if I want to affect the green and the blue differently, that's probably not going to be what I want with this tool. Okay, so let's just try the slider and see. So see how it's darkening the blues here because I'm on yellow, remember opposite? So it's adding contrast to yellow and green and darkening the blue. And it's actually doing a nice thing in the mountains here. So again, I get to choose where I want this to apply. It's actually kind of doing a neat thing in the windows of the house. Let's look at the reflection. Okay, so look everywhere. Look everywhere. So I like what it's doing in parts of the image, and I'm going to erase it from the other parts. Okay, so I don't want it here in the dark areas. It's going a little too far in here. Okay, so I'm just picking and choosing where it's applying, and maybe not so much across the sky, just one pass here. But look at how it's done a nice job on the water reflection. Okay, so we've got more contrast in the water reflection and a little bit less in this top part of the house because it's gotten too dark. So I'm keeping it off these dark areas. Now I'm seeing this little green thing here that's showing up too bright. Okay. Lots of before and afters. So let's look at the full before and after. Look at that trick in the window there. See that? Love it. Okay. I also thought about doing a sky replacement on this one. Did you do a sky replacement on this one, Anne? I'm curious. Good lesson about analogous colors. You know, it took me forever to learn how to say the word analogous. So practice that one. Okay. Hey, Brandon. Yes, I did do your images of the swans, and it is in the Q&A. And I think Rob said, is it updated yet, Rob? Has that one been updated there? So the last Q&A that we did, and I know you weren't able to make it, that was on Monday. I did do the swan images for you. Yep. Okay, so sky selection. Let's do a sky replacement. So I'm thinking I'm going to pick one from my sky set. So if you could share a link to my sky pack, please, Rob. I'm going to try a blue sky first with a little bit of puffy blue clouds. Okay. Because it's a bright sunny day and a sunset, oops, I closed the whole tool. A sunset is just not going to work. But something like this, okay, with just a little bit of clouds, and you notice that it's also picking up in the water, okay? And I recently just did my Photoshop 301 class as well, and we talked about sky replacement. And the thing with Photoshop is it does not have an automatic replacement in the reflections, okay? So I can move this around and blend it a little bit because I want to make sure it's going over. So global affects it going over any clouds in the original image, right? And you'll see that if I turn the global down, there ends up sort of being a little halo around the mountain. Okay, so the default is about 8. If I bring it down up a little bit more and do fixed details, I'm looking to blend in that edge. Okay, so I want to make sure that the edge around the mountain, okay, if I turn the sky off here, okay, look at the edge. Okay, it's blending pretty nicely. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And now I can decide if I want to just move the clouds side to side. Maybe flip it this way. Let's get those clouds right in the middle. Okay, and I can choose to add more to the reflection. I find that it brightens it too much, so I usually leave it at the default or lower. Okay, but it definitely is picking up those clouds in there. And we can even add a water blur, okay, because this water is not perfectly still, so that it blurs the water reflection as well. I can darken the sky, right? And because I've turned on these sliders here for relight, it's darkening the whole image as well. Okay, so I can do that. I can also add an atmospheric haze, which there was a haze in the background on the original image on the mountains. So by adding the haze, it just sort of softens the effect of the sky. So I'm going to add a little bit of haze and then just darken it. Okay. You can also defocus the sky. Let's have a look. Are the mountains super sharp? No, they're not. So I'm just going to defocus the sky, maybe 2 as well. And then it will match better, okay? So let's see the before and after. So the only thing left that I want to deal with is this white square in the corner from that roof. So I would go back into my dodge and burn tool, which is develop, and I'm going to darken it significantly, okay? And just paint it in to those areas. This is where I would use my brush not as soft because I want to make sure that I get the edges cleaner, okay? So I'm painting in here. Oops, see, I've already made a mess. See how I painted in? Should show my mask. There we go. So I missed that corner, right? Now it looks a little bit yellow, but I'm going to fix that. And then I'm going to paint in the same thing down here. There we go. And we can just affect the color. Or even just desaturate it a little bit. So I just want to tone that roof down. Okay, let me zoom out. See what it's doing? It's taking that white roof down. And I may have overpainted, right? I didn't get my mask done properly because I painted over on the roof too much here. So I will zoom in and do a little erase to clean up this edge here. Okay. See, I missed part of the roof over here. So that's why you have to zoom in and use a really small brush when you're doing something like this. And make sure you get the edge nice and clean. So that's when you don't want a soft brush. Okay, so not soft brush because I want a clean edge. Okay. So I'm just cleaning up my painting on this bit. Okay. The one in the water isn't as critical because it's got sort of a blurry edge anyways. But let's see what that's doing. Right. I could also even blur it as well. Not in here, but actually if I add some noise, remember noise blurs things, so we could just add some denoise, and that will actually help to blur that roof a little bit. I could actually go in and do this ramp as well, right? I probably would do the ramp also. So there we go. And do you know what I'm going to use as my final one? I'll give everybody a guess. Those of you that took my Neo course know my favorite one, which is Mystical. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of Mystical. I could pick up the shadows a little bit more. Right? So I could actually lift the shadows with this one. Warm it up overall a little bit as well. Very nice image, Anne. Looks great. Landscape editing is a challenge for you. Well, you did great on the city image that I did last time. So now's your job to copy these edits. That's your homework, and post it in the group. So give that a go. And says Neo does a better sky replacement. I agree. The benefit of Photoshop is that you get the layers, so you have access to the mask itself, but not adding the reflection is causes you more work. It just means you have to add the sky image as another layer, right? Were they not swans, Brendan? Well, let's find out. I got them in here. Let's find out. I did edit them. They look like swans to me as soon as it loads. So this is what I did with your image, Brandon, as soon as it loads here. Snow geese, maybe? Are they snow geese? Waiting for Brandon to tell us. Let's see. No, they look like swans to me. Black faces, black feet, swans. Confirmed. All right, so I'm not going to show this whole edit, but I'll just show the before and after for you, Brandon, and then you'll just have to go watch the other video to see what I did to create this one. So that's the before and the after. Right? So 2 mountain images. For those of you not living in Canada, these are the kinds of scenes that we've got up here. All right, I think I have time for one more image today. I've spent a lot of time on each of them, but I'd rather give a full edit and do a full job on the one. Let's see, who else is here? Is Sue's here? Mark, is Rob here? Rob Kershaw? Rob stands corrected. Who else is here? Karen's here, right? Okay, let's do another one of Karen's image. All right. So the first thing I noticed about this one is there's lots of dust spots. So I'm going to use the erase tool to remove dust spots, and that automatic button does it for you. So we should see those disappear. You see the dust spots I'm seeing up here in the sky. So it's thinking, it's working. Right, and it got most of them. It missed this one up here. Right, notice it didn't remove the things in the water, so that's smart. So I'm just going to go up here and get this one it missed. So I think it assumed that that was part of the cloud, right? But it does a pretty good job. Now I can decide. I don't know what that is. Maybe it is. I don't know what that is, but I don't like it, so I'm getting rid of it. So I'm just going to clean up the water a little bit. So even though they're not dust spots, I'm going to get rid of them. Just these little sort of blobs on the horizon. This is artistic license. You get to decide. Oh, they look like buoys. Yeah, buoys. I don't like them. They bother me and they take my attention. So they're out of here. Now, you'll notice that I only did erase, but there's 2 edits showing over here. Okay, it added develop raw underneath. Okay, so that I can go back and do all my raw edits first. So you'll notice that when I go back to develop, the erase tool sort of disappears, but it'll reappear once I apply both tools. Okay, so let's try landscape. Right, look at how much contrast it added. So when you have an image like this, which is a silhouette, right, you have a decision to make. Do you want to increase the shadows and bring out the subject, or do you want to go with it and run with it as a silhouette like this? I think this one is clearly meant to be a silhouette myself. Let's just see what some of the other options are. Okay. That one actually is not bad because it doesn't have as much color, but as soon as I go in and add a bit more contrast with the blacks and the whites, I'm going to get this anyways. So I could start with camera standard. I almost never choose vivid because it gives me too much contrast, okay? And I can't bring it back. So I'm going to keep it on landscape, or I actually liked this one, which was standard. Yeah, I like that one. There's a little more detail down here in the sand. Okay. I'm going to go to the optics, and I don't know that we're going to have any chromatic aberration or a fringe, but I'm going to check them off anyways. Okay. And I could try the auto distortion. Yeah, see, again, it's just adjusting for lens distortion or perspective. And to me, that's subjective on an image like this. It's not really that important. Okay. So as soon as I close this tool, it's now going to apply both of them. Okay. Take it a minute to catch up and undo those erases. The next thing I'm going to do once it catches up is do a crop. Thanks, Ray. I'm glad you found it useful. So you'd been visualizing flamingos. Yeah, no, we don't have flamingos in Alberta. Okay, so let's crop this one. Let's see what Luminar Neo wants to do with it. So again, it came in tighter, but I'm going to move it over because I always want to have more space in front of her, in front of the subject, and I'm going to come in even farther. You know, it's on a free form crop here. If I want to keep it on the original, I have to choose original. And I'm just going to come in so I get rid of some of that foreground, but she's still sort of in the middle, right? So I'm going to come in even more and give her just a little bit more bottom space. So when you're photographing, a couple of things that I would recommend here. So she's right below the sun. I would have tried to get a shot, and I know it's tricky when they're moving, where she's more over here, so she's not right underneath the sun. They would balance each other a little bit more, right? So if she was back a few steps, and when you're doing silhouette, you also want to really watch if somebody's moving, you have to take lots of shots because how their arms appear, right? It looks like her arm is missing on this side, and then she's got a hip distortion with her hand coming out of her hip. Right, so you really want to watch the silhouette lines of things and how they look. Okay, so now she's got more space in front of her, and I'm going to go back to the develop tool one more time. So I want to look at the histogram, right? And it looks pretty good, right? There's probably some things clipping, but that's going to be the sun. I could bring the shadows up a little bit, but again, I don't want to make this, right? So I'm not looking to have detail in her. There's some flare coming across there, which gives me an idea, right? So I'm just going to give her a little bit, right? Bringing the highlights down does adjust that sun as well. And see, when your highlights are lower, you actually get more color, right? So when your image is washed out, if you photograph the sunset and it looks like this, and you're wondering why your colors aren't bright and intense, it's because you want to expose like this. Okay, so your exposure here is actually bang on, perfect. Okay, so come back to tools and apply that again. All right, now the idea that I just got was to apply some bokeh as an overlay because she's kind of already got some on her, and the sky with the sun coming at us is going to naturally produce some bokeh. Let's try the color contrast tool first. Take a minute for Neo to catch up to me. Sometimes when I'm live streaming, it takes a minute. Plus, it's trying to do that erase tool for me. So give it a second. Did I miss any questions while I was talking, Rob? Please give this video while we're waiting. Please give this video a thumbs up and remember to subscribe to the channel. And if you want to come to this live every weekend, we do this every week the same time. We will be switching over to a weekday evening time. So that might work a little better for you, Trish, a little bit later in the day, and try and pick up some European viewers, right? And we'll let you know in plenty of time when that's going to happen. All right, what is happening here? Okay, I'm just going to undo this one and do it again. All right. So color harmony. There we go. It was stuck. So, look what's happening, right? I don't want to go too high, obviously. But if I want more intense contrast in the sky, I could play with this one here. Okay? In this case, there's already lots of contrast in the sky, so I probably don't need any more. But look what it does to the color, right? And there's sort of these ring around the sun now. So that's kind of cool. Right? We could warm everything up a bit more, or look what happens there. So this is a really great example of what this slider does. Okay, so on this slider here, split color warmth, when you take the warm slider to the left, you're neutralizing the sun, neutralizing the orange. Okay, let's see what happens with cools. Not really doing that much. A little bit on the ocean. Let's play with this just a tiny bit more. How's that? Right. I'm also going to go in and we could do sun rays here, right? I'm not going to replace the sky because the sky is great, right? But there's already some sun rays coming out. So let's just play with that a little bit. That's the wrong place, obviously. So we need to put it where it is, which is right there. Now I could hide it behind the cloud, okay? And I definitely want to warm it up, and that's too much rays. So we're going to warm up the rays to match, warm up the sun to match, right? And then we can just decide, okay, we want less rays, more rays, probably less. And then my favorite randomizer, right? That looks pretty good. So the rays are already there. We're just sort of working on enhancing what's already there. The overall look allows me to even enhance that silhouette even further. Okay. So look at that. Now, if I don't want it glowing so much up at the top, of course, I can just mask it. I'm going to take a big giant brush and just remove it from this top section here, like that. So it's not glowing as much up as it is down. And if I don't want it coming over her head so much, again, just remove it from her a tiny bit. Like that. So that's kind of cool. And let's try the bokeh. So I've got a couple of bokehs already loaded here, and there's one that's yellow. So we could try one that's really fun and just make it into something funky. I'll change the blend mode. Okay, so these are in my bokeh set. If you want to check these out, Rob, could you please share a link to those? Okay, so this one here, we could do something fun. I want to make sure that's sort of radiating out from her. It's not working for me. Let's try the other one. Let's try this yellow one. So remember the bokeh that you add as an overlay, it doesn't even have to be the same color, right? This image is all yellow, but I could just add one that's a different color. Let me show you here. Let's just add one that's green, for example. Okay, so I'm adding this one that's green, but I can shift that, right? So once I apply it, and let's do lighten, okay, or screen, okay, so that's not bad, right? So I can apply it, and then I can go in and adjust this layer, right? So I can say I want less saturation, and it literally, the bokeh becomes white, okay? Or I can just shift the color completely. So I can go into here and shift the green hue to yellow. See that? So it doesn't really matter what your bokeh overlay color is. You can shift it to any color you want, right? Here's another hue shift. So keep going. Now I got red. Okay. So if I'm happy with this one, I can apply it, or I can mask off and just show a few of them. Like maybe I just want one down here, right? Make sure you get the positioning of your bokeh right first and then mask it, right? Because I do find that the mask stays with, if you flip it, the mask stays with the image. It doesn't stay where it is. I'll show you what I mean here. Okay, so if I want to erase it from her, for example, okay, you'll see how there's no bokeh on her, okay, but then I flip the image, okay, now the mask is over here. So you want to always mask first, or get your orientation first and then mask, sorry. So get your orientation, which way do you want it to go, right? I can also position this a little differently. So if I want to have smaller bokeh and just have a couple of them, right, I can do this and just have them up in the sky or down here. If I just want a couple over here. Let's flip it this way. There's a lot of bokeh on here, right? But I just want a couple. I can stretch them. I can do all kinds of stuff. So let's just mask. And this time I'm just going to paint in a couple of them. Oops. Clear it and then just paint in. So I'm just painting in a couple of bokehs. Make sure the edge of the image isn't showing because I made it smaller. Right. So just like that. Oops. Okay. So if I want to do that, I could apply multiple layers of bokeh as well. Just something fun. If you want to play with bokehs on this image, I think it would work really well. All right, so let's see. Any questions? How are we doing here? Ah, your teenage granddaughter. She would like the bokeh. Excellent. All right, we'll give that a go, Karen, and see what she thinks. Make something fun for your granddaughter. And especially, you know, if you're working with kids or grandkids and you're doing the editing, show them a couple of variations because they may have ideas that you didn't think of, right? Kids are extra creative. Let them influence you. So I'd love to ask a question of everybody. Did you learn something today? If you learned something today, please put that in the chat of what did you pick up today as a tip or an idea or a concept, anything. What did you pick up today? Okay, so we edited Amsterdam. We did the owl. We did the mountain scene with the reflection. And we did the silhouette. Next week, we're going to be doing Lightroom. So all the images will be edited in Lightroom. And then we're going to switch back to Neo the following week. So each week on our live streams now, we're going to be changing it up, right? Any questions that I missed? If you're watching this video as a replay and you learned something by watching this, I hope you did, leave a comment in below the video. Any links that we've mentioned during this video will be in the description area below if you're watching it, the recording. I know some people want to catch up later, and we have regulars that come and join us every week. Karen says, using the develop tool and the mask to dodge and burn and the S-curve reversed to make a negative. Cool, awesome. And your granddaughter is very artistic. Yeah, so she might want one different version for all of those different social medias for sure, right? You could even try a texture overlay on that one, which might be cool too. Okay, so a fun image to play around with. You're watching Color Harmony, not got a good grasp on it yet. Yeah, keep trying it. If there's anything I can answer for you on that, Sheila, the way that it works, let me see if I have an image that's a good example. Let me use this one of Marty's, because this image here is exactly what this tool is made for. I'm just going to brighten it just a little bit here. Okay. So we've got this really cool sunset with opposite colors. Okay, so blue and red or blue and orange are, again, opposite on that color wheel. So what it's looking for is exactly that. So I drag the amount up first. So this is all you have to do, okay? And then just slowly drag the hue and see what it does. So see, right now I'm in the red-orange section of this color slider. So it's brightening and enhancing the contrast of reds and oranges. In other words, the sunset part. But as I go farther and I start to get into the blues, okay, see, now it's doing the opposite. Okay, so it's brightening and enhancing contrast of blues while at the same time darkening the reds. Okay, so see that again? If I'm in the reds, the blues are being darkened and the reds are being enhanced. Opposite. Okay, so we could really get some intense color from this one. See that? Does that help a little bit, Sheila, in terms of understanding the opposite thing? Let's see. Reinforce the color shifting, Stephanie. Thank you. Color harmony. Yeah, it's fast becoming my new favorite tool, right? Dodge and burn and mask. Watching the masking closely. Awesome, Trish. Have you done the Luminar Neo course, Trish? I'm not sure if you were with us. I don't remember seeing you in any of the lives or if you had purchased that one or not. If you are using Luminar Neo for most of your editing, you might want to take a look at the Neo course because I go over, there's about 20 hours of instruction and Q&A in that one alone. Darken the whole image, get rid of highlights, and then mask it. Exactly. Dodge and burn tool. Can Rob do the editing next week? I'm going to say no if you want to learn something. You'll probably have fun, but that's a whole other different game. Okay. It is similar to color toning, but color toning in Lightroom is they've replaced it. It used to be split toning, and it's more similar to toning in here. So if I go back to, for example, this image of Vivian's from Amsterdam here, and I go to toning, okay, this used to be called split toning, and in Lightroom they call it color grading or color toning, I think. I don't know. I don't have my Lightroom open. We could look at that. But in here, okay, this is where you can affect the shadows, right, differently than the highlights. And I did use this tool, I think, to affect. Yes, I did. Okay, because we affected the color in the foreground. So that's where you affect shadows and highlights separately. And in Lightroom, you can do shadows, highlights, and midtones. Okay, so it's more similar to toning. Patience to create a subtle change is good. Yes. Okay. So that is actually a really good point because trying to go from A to X in one step is going to make your editing more obvious. Okay. So you want to have all the steps in between and build it up. Okay. Think of it like painting a wall. Okay. If you're painting your fence outside in your yard or your house, a wall, you don't just take the paintbrush, get a big blob and go splash, right? Because what happens? You make a big mess, you get blobs of paint, it drips on the floor, it drips on the grass, okay, all of those things. No, you get a little bit of paint, you wipe it off, you do a thin coat, and then you come back and you do another one, right? Think of it the same way. Okay. Thanks, Crystal. Learn something new every time. The Amsterdam edit was particularly helpful. You have images where the foreground is darker than the background, right? So just be careful as you're doing it, Crystal, that you don't overdo it and make the foreground brighter and look like it doesn't match or that it's obviously edited. The idea behind editing at the end of the day is that you want to have a good image. You don't want to have good editing. You want people to look at your image and say, great image, I love it. You don't want them to look at that and say, oh, nice dodging and burning, right? So just keep that in mind. Awesome, Sheila. I'm glad that helps. Color harmony, color harmony, color harmony. All right. Yes, I believe you're right, Marguerite. The color grading used to be called split toning in Lightroom. So it's more similar to toning in Luminar, not to the color harmony tool. I don't know of anything that's similar in Lightroom to the color harmony tool at all. It's unique to Neo for sure. Did you have another question, Marguerite, or did I get hers? Okay, yeah, I did get that question, Rob. So let me just pop over here. Okay, we've got my color wheel. Let's see what else I got here. To submit your photos for next week, I'm going to be doing Lightroom. So if you're using Lightroom predominantly as your photo editor, I would love to have some of your images to edit. Remember, I always want raw files and the original. If you want to submit two versions, your edit and the original, to compare, we can do that as well. So that is a link to the form for you to submit your images. And it's a Google form, and send them to me to consider for doing next week. Okay. I don't always get to all the images. So the ones that I didn't get to today, I will save for 2 weeks from now when I'm doing Neo again. And Rob is messaging me. Yes. So we're doing Lightroom next week, Neo the following week, and alternating, so on. Great. So that's it for today. I'm going to sign off and say goodbye. I have a tutoring session in about an hour with one of our Luminar Neo students who needs help with his Lightroom. So have a good Easter weekend, everybody. Take care. And I hope the Easter Bunny is good to you.